says they're not true. And if they are true, then he will be removed from the committee. So that's it's kind of a lower standard that members of Congress have been held to in terms of committee removal and other assignments if they are under federal investigation.
All right, more storylines of the six soap opera. Sungmin Kim, thank
계속
you.
허리가 아픕니다.
All right. Millions of doses of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine were ruined because of human error at a manufacturing plant. So what impact will this have on America's vaccine supply? That's next.
This is the 100 Club, our look at companies that are 100 years old or older. The beginnings of one of the world's most famous zoos was an unconventional one linked to a major world event, the completion of the Panama Canal. In 1915, the Panama, California Exposition was held in San Diego.
When that exposition was done, a lot of the exhibitors pulled out and left. The animals that were left behind became the very first animals that were part of the San Diego Zoo.
According to the zoo, one sound started it all.
We had a local surgeon here named Dr. Harry Wegeforth. As he was driving back from one of his appointments, so we are told that he heard some lions roaring. He turned to his brother who was in the car with him and said, well, I think it'd be splendid if we started a zoo here in San Diego.
And in October of 1916, Dr. Wegeforth's dreams were realized. Today, the company runs an annual budget of more than $300 million.
We're reaching over 1 billion people a year in 150 countries with our broadcast material. We have to be connecting our audience to our commitment to protect wildlife around the globe. And for us, that is going to be critical.
I'm Selena Wang in Hong Kong, and this is CNN.
Today we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed. My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
One of the challenges I face is how do I reposition our forces to deal with the threats of the coming decades?
Any thought about running for president in France? Basta? We also explore vital issues impacting our lives.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
I'm on board. Tuesday to Saturday on CNN.
과연 일본에서 올림픽을 할까요? 진짜 올해 지금 상하봉송 한다고 지금 뉴스에 나오는데 자, 일본은 해도 고민 안 해도 고민이겠네요.
Rivers in Rio de Janeiro. This is CNN.
Okay, listen to this. Millions of doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine have been ruined. after workers at a Baltimore plant accidentally mixed up some of the ingredients. Joining us now is Dr. Jeremy Faust. He's an emergency physician at Brigham and Women's Hospital and an instructor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Faust, this is such a shame. I mean, 15 million doses, and that's a single dose vaccine. So in other words, 15 million Americans could have soon been vaccinated with the J&J thing if not for this lab screw up. I know these things happen, but that seems like a large scale screw up. And I mean, again, in the scheme of millions of Americans needing to be vaccinated, maybe this is a fraction, but how big of a setback is this?
Well, it's a setback in terms of people's confidence. They hear headlines, they read this in the paper, and they think, can I really trust what's going into my arm? And the answer is yes, they can. The authorities caught this in time so that no single person was ever given a product that wasn't going to help them stay out of the hospital or not die because of coronavirus. So yeah, there's a confidence piece to this, but there's also the other side, which is that we have 3 products, including Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer, all of which keep you out of the hospital, protect your lungs from COVID pneumonia, and save lives. So, and it's a shame that it's going to be delayed a little bit, but it does, to me, underscore the approach we've had, which is to have several different options and not just one solitary rollout.
Yeah, look, I mean, perfect's not on the menu, but let's call it what it is. This is a massive operational mess up with real world implications. But I want to move to a new story about the variations we're seeing. So we've got some statistics that are beginning to measure how serious they are. And this is from the New York City Department of Health. They wrote that in the week of March 15th to 21st, variants now represent over 70% of the cases sequenced. The rapid increase in the proportion of cases due to these variants suggests they are more infectious than previously circulating variants. That is a serious thing. And anecdotally, are you seeing the impact of variants in your hospitals, particularly with a younger cohort of patients than perhaps the senior citizens who seem to be the people primarily hospitalized in recent waves?
스트레칭은 좀 더 하겠습니다.
Yes, anecdotally, and also just in the data sets, we do see here and also around the country that the average age of the hospitalized COVID-19 patient has become lower and lower, which makes sense. The older population is largely, or at least increasingly, protected by the vaccines, which leaves younger people. It does take more infections for enough people to be hospitalized in the young age group to occur. If you infect 50 older people, many of them will be in the hospital, but it might take hundreds or even 1,000, actually just hundreds of patients, and then you'll see dozens of younger adults in the hospital. And that's what you end up seeing, is the infection hospitalization rate is high enough among young adults that we are seeing that crop up. And that's the concern, right? These are very contagious variants, and the people who don't have access to the vaccine are the younger adults, parents, people in the prime of their work lives. These have long tail implications, and so we really are asking people to do the things that we have been saying for months and a year now to hold out for that vaccine.
Yeah, understood. Dr. Jeremy Faust, thank you very much for all the information. So it was another very emotional day in court at the Derek Chauvin trial. We break down the key moments and what impact they could be having on the jury. That's next.
Allow me to show you something. The New York World's Fair of 1939, and I declare it open to all mankind.
In an unprecedented event, the leaders of the war on COVID break their silence. What they saw.
That was a line in the sand for me.
What they believe.
I could use the word cover up.
Are you threatened?
And what's next.
There will be another pandemic. Guaranteed.
CNN Special Report, COVID War. The Pandemic Doctors Speak Out. Saturday on CNN.
When a watch presents us with something that is completely different, even unique, it can be classified as an icon. In 1976, a Chopard designer was walking through a forest and he was mesmerized by the sight of sunbeams sparkling on a waterfall. The designer captured this moment by creating a watch where a bevy of diamonds just swirled and danced and spun. Diamonds scratch and eventually wear away any surface they move against. There's a solution to this problem ingenious. You know that round piece of paper that wraps around the bottom of a cupcake or muffin? Well, with the diamonds, that wraparound was performed by gold. Gold is a very soft material, so it doesn't harm anything. Now, a watch that presents us with diamonds flying through a case, well, that qualifies as an icon.
Interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
The murder trial of Derek Chauvin resumes this morning, following a day filled with emotional testimony and never-before-seen video of George Floyd's deadly encounter with police. Joining us now with the key moment, CNN legal analyst Ellie Honig, the former federal and state prosecutor. Ellie, what stood out to you?
Yeah, John, Charles McMillan, without question. I've seen a lot of witnesses testify. I will never forget that. I don't think the jury will forget that either. Charles McMillan was the 61-year-old man who witnessed what happened that day outside of Cup Foods. Now, at one point, the prosecutors played for McMillan some of the police body camera footage of that deadly encounter that he had witnessed live 10 months before, and his reaction was indelible. Let's take a look at that moment.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man.
Can I stop it right here, please?
Mama, look.
Mr. McMillan, do you need a minute?
I feel helpless. I don't have a mama either. I understand him.
That moment will be seared in the minds of the jurors. And we saw from Mr. McMillan the same thing we've seen from so many witnesses in this trial, that lingering sense of trauma, of helplessness, of self-doubt. We saw it also yesterday from the young cashier, Christopher Martin. Both of them said they wish there had been something more they could have done to help George Floyd.
Ellie, we also got to hear for the first time Derek Chauvin's voice. And his, I guess, justification on that body cam video where he said, you know, we have to control him. He's a sizable guy. So what's the prosecution trying to do there?
The prosecution strategy there is to take the jury inside the mind of Derek Chauvin at the key moment in this trial. Now, to set the stage, Derek Chauvin has just knelt on George Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes. George Floyd's lifeless body has been taken away, and we got to hear what Derek Chauvin said at exactly that moment. Let's take a look.
Trying to control this guy because he's a sizable guy. Yeah, looks like he's probably on something.
Now, on the one hand, The jury has now heard Chauvin's defense. Prosecutors sometimes say, don't do the defendant's defense for him. If he wants to say his defense, make him take the stand. You get to cross-examine him. On the other hand, notice how calm, eerily dispassionate Chauvin is after he's just snuffed the life out of another human. And if I'm a prosecutor, I'm arguing that's intent. That shows you Derek Chauvin either utterly did not care what happened to George Floyd or else intended for him to be hurt.
Ellie, that was just one example of a lot of new body camera footage that we saw yesterday for the first time. So what's the importance of that particular piece of evidence in this trial, the body camera?
Yeah, John, I've taught police departments on how to use body cameras, and I would always say body cameras will protect good cops and they'll expose the bad ones. And the power of body cameras is it puts the jury directly in the police officer's shoes. It allows the jury to see almost exactly what the police officer saw and heard almost in real time. Let's take a look at some of the most interesting, most important body camera footage we saw yesterday.
I'll roll the window down. Man, I'm scared, man. When I start breathing, it's gonna go up on me, man. Oh my God. I gotta tell you, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man. Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you. You got power? Yeah, my kids, I love them. I'm dead.
Okay.
This will allow the jury to make the key decision in this case. In that situation that we just saw, was Derek Chauvin's conduct reasonable and necessary, or was it excessive and hence criminal?
All right, Ellie Honig, thank you very much. Very helpful. We're going to have to leave it there for now.
Thanks, John.
See you tomorrow. All right, New York prosecutors have reportedly subpoenaed the personal bank records of the Trump Organization's longtime chief financial officer. So what does this mean for former President Trump? That's next.
For me, it was archaic to throw all our waste into one dustbin, and it ended up in our ever-growing landfills in India. And I wanted to change that. I am Riya Mazumdar Singhal. I am the CEO and founder of EcoWare. We take agricultural waste, these are crops such as wheat, rice, and sugarcane, and convert it into packaging that is 100% biodegradable and compostable. Once it comes in contact with soil, it will actually break down within 90 days. Typically, this waste has had no value whatsoever, and we've now found value. So you would find us at quick service restaurants. We retail online and offline, and we export. Just in 2019, we displaced 50 million pieces of single-use plastic with EcoWare. We are very impact-driven, and as we scale, we obviously are looking to scale our impact. And we know that single-use plastic is a global problem, and we wish to be a global solution.
We see more and more companies, banks, telling governments that they need to adopt measures that facilitate the transition to a green economy, and that we are able to reflect all the costs that exist if we don't move into climate action in the way markets work, in order to make sure that we really are able to achieve net zero, that we really are able to move, to have a transformational movement in relation to energy, in relation to industry, in relation to agriculture, to transportation, and to all the other sectors. I see the private sector moving ahead sometimes, governments lagging behind, and I hope that this dynamism of the private sector will help us build this global coalition for net zero that is absolutely essential at the present moment.
I'm Selena Wang in Hong Kong.
In central Kalimantan, Indonesia.
In Beirut.
In Tehran.
On the Congo River in Kinshasa.
Lagos, Nigeria.
In Moscow.
In London. Mexico City.
Manaus, Brazil.
The White House. And this is CNN.
I'm Matthew Chance in London. And this is CNN.
아우 힘들어.
We have an update now in a criminal investigation into the Trump Organization. CNN has reviewed sworn depositions and interviews with former employees and found that former President Trump has repeatedly pushed responsibility for dubious financial filings onto his chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg. But the documents also reveal that Trump himself was, in fact, deeply involved in his company's financial decisions. CNN's Kara Scannell joins us now with her reporting. What have you learned, Kara?
Yeah, Allison, good morning. I mean, one thing to look at here is this 2007 deposition where former President Donald Trump is under oath, and he's asked questions about how did he prepare his financial statements and come up with the values for his properties. And in this deposition, Donald Trump says under oath that most of these decisions ultimately came down to his chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg. Here's what he said. Trump said, he shows me what he ultimately comes up with, and I am not sure I ever said change that number. He shows me, we'll talk about it, he'll do it. And twice when Trump was asked specifically about the values ascribed to Trump Tower and a golf course, both times the former president said Mr. Weisselberg did that one. But the deposition also reveals that Donald Trump was very involved. He was asked point blank if he had inflated the value of his assets. Trump said not beyond reason. He was asked, did he exaggerate? Trump said, everybody does, who wouldn't? And they asked him specifically about one of these properties, Seven Springs. It's the family estate in New York, just north of New York City. And in those documents, the financial statements, Trump had valued that 1 year at $80 million, the next year at $150 million. So the made up for that huge leap in value, and Trump said that was based on his opinion. He was asked, did you consult any appraisers or any experts? And Trump said no, it was his opinion. So the big question here is, were these